Another offense that's struggling is the Arizona Cardinals. Their offense has been bad this year. They scored 9 points versus the Seahawks, which the Seahawks coming into the game were the worst defense in the NFL in terms of letting up yards. Arizona failed to score an offensive touchdown for the second time this season. And right now we're looking at a team who's 22nd in offense, 22nd in defense. Cliff Kingsbury, the chance for him to be fired are growing louder and louder over the course of the past couple of weeks. So what's behind Arizona's offensive struggles?
Going into this game, the last two opponents who played Seattle combined for 84 points.
God damn.
And now Arizona couldn't score an offensive touchdown against them. Cliff Kingsbury in the offseason got an extension, got paid through 2027. We know Kyler got paid as well. He got a huge contract. He was complaining about it. And I'm all for guys getting their money. I have no problem. I think Kyler is the franchise quarterback, a borderline top 10 guy. But I was never on this Cliff train. I was never on Cliff Kingsbury should be the guy. He's the head coach of the future. I feel very similar with Zach Taylor. Joe Burrow's the guy without a doubt. He's the franchise quarterback. He's a top 10 guy. He's the guy that gets you to the Super Bowl. I feel the same way about Kyler, but these head coaches have not proven it to me. I think their quarterbacks have not exceeded, but their quarterbacks are so good, it boosts up the offense. It boosts up the head coach. It makes them look better than they actually are. I think a lot of people get kind of in this realm, well, every year the Cardinals get better. Every year Kyler Murray has gotten better. Kyler Murray was the number 1 overall pick. They had 3 wins, the worst roster in the league. They went from 3 wins to 5 wins, still last in the division. Then they went from 5 wins to 8 wins, third in the division. Last year was finally the year they cracked through. They got 11 wins. They started off 7-0, then went 4-11 the rest of the season. So I understand you made the playoffs for the first time in a while. You got smoked by the Rams. It was not a competitive game by any means. So while they did get better, in the grand scheme of things, they weren't able to get over that hump. Getting to the playoffs is one thing, but if you're not competitive in the second half of the year, if you're going 4-11, that doesn't tell me that you figured it out as a head coach. It doesn't tell me that you have solidified yourself as the future head coach of this football team. Now, a team that consistently has got off to hot starts in Cliff Kingsbury's career is 2-4. They're 21st in scoring. They average 1.7 points per drive on their first drives, the worst in the league. And I understand they haven't had DeAndre Hopkins, but the Tennessee Titans are averaging 12.4 points the Tennessee Titans, without A.J. Brown, who they lost in the offseason, their first 3 drives averaging 12.4 points per game. They're getting off to a hot start with probably a quarterback that's not as good, with weapons that aren't as good. Sure, they have Derrick Henry without a doubt, but Cliff Kingsbury has not been able to get off these hot starts. They've never had a top 10 offense. They've struggled to run the ball consistently. Cliff Kingsbury has not developed any of these receivers. Rondale Moore, who's looked better this year, was not great as a rookie. Andy Isabella, who he didn't draft, was never able to develop into any type of receiver. He's off the team now. They've never had a consistent running game. James Conner had a ton of touchdowns last year. He averaged less than 4 yards per carry. He was super inefficient. Just around the red zone, he's a really good player. So it's been the Kyler Murray show. Kyler Murray was the number 1 overall pick, by far the best quarterback in his draft class. Everyone coming out saw how electrifying he was, and he's the reason, really the reason why this Cardinals team has progressed year after year. Is Cliff Kingsbury Urban Meyer? No. He's not someone that's going to hold back your franchise. He's not someone that's going to hold back your development of Kyler Murray. But he's not someone that should have got a 5-year extension through 2027. So he's not that level of coach.
So you're not giving – are you saying this is solely on Kingsbury? Now you're not giving Kyler no blame?
You can't give Kyler no blame, but Cliff has not done enough to deserve an extension. The original question was, is it time for the Cards to fire Cliff Kingsbury? You don't fire him because you just gave him all this money to be the coach. You have to let him at least ride it out through this year. If you end the year being 5-11 or something like that, you have to seriously, or 5-12 or 17 games, you have to seriously consider moving off him. Even with all the money, these owners are billionaires. I don't think it should be a problem. They traded for Robbie Anderson, who has a huge cap hit. I'm surprised anyone even traded for that contract. So while Kyler obviously, especially with Hollywood being out for 6 weeks, Kyler deserves some of the blame. But I think how great he is as a player, you have to look at the coaching and saying, where are you making this team better? Because we know Kyler's going to be great. How are you going to make this offensive line better? How are you going to make the receivers develop these receivers? How are you going to make the running game go? Because right now, Cliff hasn't been able to do any of that.
You can, go ahead. Because I just
click your lips.
Yeah, no, because I just think even if
locked in on his lips,
my lips,
sucking lips.
But I just think even if Kingsbury gets fired, a lot of the stuff K1 does is really him. Like his IQ on the field, his bad decision making. Like he still has rookie problems in year 3, year 4. But it could just be a me thing.
But look what Dable does with the Giants. with a pretty limited quarterback with Daniel Jones, who's had turnover problems, who's had fumbling problems, had decision-making problems. Like,
That's true.
Dable comes in year one, you see it right away. Boom. Team's completely different.
That's very true.
You saw it with Doug Peterson to start off the year. They've had their ups and downs, but you see the moments, right, where Trev has made that step for sure. Now, like I said, he's not holding Kyler back by any means, but I also don't know if he's the reason Kyler has consistently gotten better. I just think that shows how good Kyler Murray is as quarterback.
There's a brand new fantasy app. It's called Boom Fantasy. You got over-unders, player props. You got matchups. This player versus that player. That's personally my favorite and long shots. You can win 40 times your money. And if I'm not mistaken, Joel, NBA is coming soon.
Yes, sir. NBA will be in the app in the next 10 days or so. I believe opening night is October 19th, so we'll have stuff up a few days beforehand. That's going to be fun because we have it every night. You don't have to wait till Monday, Thursday.
Did you get your code for the League Pass?
I did get my code for the League Pass.
I got my code too.
Yep, that's amazing.
That's from 2K, right?
Yes.
That's tough.
Amazing.
That's fire.
So if you guys haven't already, download the Boom Fantasy app right now. Link is in our description or in the caption wherever you're watching. Watching this game, I came away with 2 takeaways. Kenneth Walker is a break and tackling machine.
He's a beast.
He had 12 missed tackles. He was amazing. It was 9-19 the final score. Arizona went for it 3 times on 4th down when they were in field goal range, which cost them, you could say, 9 points hypothetically. Because of those decisions, Cliff Kingsbury made it a 2-possession game when it should have been a 1-possession game late in the game. I will say I'll give him some slack because the kicker they had was Matt Amendola, and he missed an extra point in that game, and he's also not a good kicker.
Damn.
They just signed Arrigo Blankenship, who's accurate but doesn't have a strong leg, so maybe they'll kick it next time. But the offense was lethargic. It's a combination of just a simple scheme, and I think Kyler being inaccurate and late on some throws. I think Kyler Murray is late on throws. He's inaccurate. And it's just, Arizona doesn't have the playmakers to consistently win versus man-to-man coverage. That's really what it comes down to. And last year versus man coverage, Kyler Murray, when DeAndre Hopkins was not on the field, was very bad because you're counting on A.J. Green to beat people one-on-one consistently.
At this point.
Hollywood Brown, he has the stats because of volume, but he's not somebody who can consistently win. And even then in that game, Kyler Murray underthrew a ball to him. The one of the last plays of the game, when Tariq Woolen was on him, the Tariq Woolen interception, Kyler Murray underthrew that ball to Hollywood Brown. He didn't put it out there long enough for Hollywood Brown to just run and get it. He kind of threw it short. But the scheme is simple. The Cardinals' offense is a bunch of simple screens, RPOs, quick passes. That's how they get down the field. The way they score is off these 14-play drives, and they get a touchdown or field goal off of that. But they very rarely just make these explosive big-time plays unless it's a Kyler Murray 30-plus yard run where he just escapes everybody and goes full Houdini. I do think that Kyler does limit an offense just because it's the same thing with Russell Wilson. He can't see. And it's really it's not a knock against him. It's just a fact. When you are 5'8", 5'9", and your offensive linemen are 6'5", it's hard to see over those guys and throw over those offensive linemen. That's why we see quarterbacks like Kyler and Russ, they don't target the middle of the field consistently because they have to see you to throw the ball. And Tua even mentioned it in one of his interviews and one of his post-game press conference where he mentioned that. And I feel like that's a problem. So Cliff Kingsbury's scheme is very simple, and I think the league has figured him out. I think it's over with his scheme. Unless they have an overload of talent, which you just can't beat my guy one-on-one, then these things won't work. But when you do have a lack of talent, his lack of creativity shows even more. What I will say, which is a bright side for the Cardinals, is that Hollywood Brown comes back this season. D-Hop is coming back. I don't think Robbie's a bad receiver. I think he just was in Carolina. That's really it. I think DJ Moore right now, if somebody watched football this year, they would say, wow, that DJ Moore guy is one of the worst receivers in the league. They would say that because he's in Carolina. Robbie Anderson in year one with Teddy Bridgewater had 1,000 yards. Before that with the Jets, he was consistently putting up 900 yards with Josh McCown.
Really good number two.
Robbie Anderson, he's a good number 2, but with Arizona, he's number 3. And now you have speed. You have Robbie. You have Hollywood who run 4.3. You have D-Hop who can get open against anybody in the league. Zach Ertz, who's a really good tight end. Now they have weapons, and I think when we see this offensive fully get together and be healthy, we might see a different Arizona. We might see an Arizona that before it was hot start and slow ending. Now it might be slow start, fast ending because of the health of these guys. But ultimately, I do think the league is catching up to Cliff Kingsbury, and the blame is mostly on him. And I don't think if they have a losing season and miss the playoffs, he should be the coach next year. But it's more than him. It's Steve Keim who built this roster. The lack of depth they have on this roster is eye-opening. The draft picks they've made back-to-back years, drafting a linebacker in the first round when you could draft other positions of need that are more important, maybe a left tackle. Like instead of drafting Isaiah Simmons, maybe draft a Tristan Wirfs. Or
that would have been nice.
Or a Mekhi Becton, or
awesome.
I know he got hurt, but just protect your young quarterback. But no, they decided to draft a guy and Isaiah Simmons, who has been disappointing to this point. Zaven Collins has been disappointing. I think they've just missed on the draft. Cliff Kingsbury is not good enough of a coach to overcome the lack of offensive talent all around on the team. And Kyler also has his deficiencies, but I think Kyler's deficiencies can be masked to some degree with a better coach.
So do you think, would you have extended him last offseason?
Cliff?
No. Agreed.
So you just let him, like you would have fired him?
Well, right now, yeah.
I would just let him prove it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. He probably had a year, maybe 2 left on his deal. I 100% feel the same way. You have to do another year. If not, move off, try to find another guy.
What's an ideal coach for a guy like K1?
I think to your point, it's coaching. You also need to get their offense was so small. You have Hollywood, who's 5'9", Rondell Moore, who's 5'9". He's like Rondell might be like 5'6". Greg Dortch is under 5'10". Like you had an offense full of guys without Hopkins who are short, fast, and kind of all do the same thing, right? None of them, like you said, are winning one-on-one a lot of the time. Hollywood probably the best out of the bunch, but even still, he's not elite at it by any means. You have A.J. Green there who is, a bigger body receiver, but at the end of his career. You don't have anyone with that size with Hopkins off the field who you knew was going to be suspended this year, who got banged up last year, who's 30 years old. Like, you have to start thinking, Hopkins might not be here for 17 games for the rest of his career, right? He's going to miss some time. Could we have someone else who does something else for us other than Rondell Moore, who we used a second-round pick on? So I think the offensive mindset and just the way they put this together, if you think, we always talk about how like having a starting 5 of basketball compared to football, guys who could do different things. The Cardinals didn't do that. I guess you have Zach Ertz they traded for, who could do some things over the middle of the field. So I think getting some guys who could do different things at receiver, also upgrading from James Conner, who I wasn't a huge fan of. He's a fine running back, but maybe someone a bit more explosive who could have that home run hitting ability, but also having a coach who is a bit more creative, who isn't just running screen passes out there. I think Kyler, like you said, masks a lot of things that's wrong with his offense. And Cliff, to this point, I mean, he was a questionable hire as is when he got hired by the Cardinals a few years ago, coming from Texas Tech. And I think now, for the most part, he's gotten figured out, right? Like the stuff that was working isn't working as effectively, especially when you don't have DeAndre Hopkins on the field. And now you're not going to see what this offense could have looked like with Hopkins and Hollywood. You'll have it 6 weeks from now. But 6 weeks from now, if they're 4-10, it's not going to matter, right? Your season's going to be done.
Since 2020, this Arizona's draft: Isaiah Simmons, Josh Jones, Leke Fotu, Rashard Lawrence, Evan Weaver, Eno Benjamin. Zaven Collins, 2021, Rondell Moore, Marco Wilson, Victor Demikuje, Tay Gowan, James Wiggins, Michael Manette, and then this year, Trey McBride, Cameron Thomas, Majai Sanders, Keontae Ingram, and it's just a bunch of 6th, 7th round picks.
Yeah.
I named one starter, literally. Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins, Rondell Moore, who's even like a borderline starter, Marco Wilson. They've came away with 4 starters in the past 3 drafts. And that's not how you build a roster.
It's not. No, I mean, yeah, thank God they hit on Kyler.
No, that was easy.
If not, they probably would have had the first pick again.
The first pick, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Literally couldn't flop that one.
So I know you had a bit of a cards agenda coming into the year. Are you still in?
And on what?
The cards.
Doing what?
I don't remember where you had them. Did you have them as a playoff team?
No. I don't know.
You might have.
It's really, you know what?
I low-key feel like you had them with 10 wins.
I'm not gonna lie, I probably did. I won't lie. I mean, what are they, 2-4?
Yeah.
Top of the division is 3-3. Listen,
not, I mean, yeah.
Hey, listen, shit can happen. D-Hop comes back, you know what I'm saying?